Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Mormon Atheist. This is going to be the second, well, I guess this is the third live stream that I've done. The first two didn't really go so well. The first one was okay. The second one just flat out sucked. And yeah, so here we are, third time's a charm. Hopefully this one works out a little bit better. Kind of one thing I want to talk about today on this episode is more or less just what I'm kind of about, the way that I look at the Book of Mormon. So the topic of this episode is let's talk about the Book of Mormon. So that's what we're going to do. So kind of in context of the way that I do it, I guess this is kind of what makes my channel a little different than everybody else's. Is I am LDS, okay, or I was LDS, whatever you want to say. I grew up, I was born and raised in the LDS church. My whole life, my parents, my family, my aunts, uncles, cousins, they're all to this day still practicing members. So it's very much in my life, right? It's very much a prevalent part of my life. I don't believe in it. I don't buy into it. I don't have anything to do with it. But nonetheless, that's why I am called the Mormon Atheist, is because I am not an atheist, but I do not believe in Mormonism. So therefore, I am the Mormon Atheist, right? Makes sense. Okay, so then another thing is how exactly I read the Book of Mormon, right? I do have my Book of Mormon. I do read it, but I read it probably differently than most people read it. So when I have already read the Bible, I've read the Book of Enoch, I have read Epic of Gilgamesh, the Immanuel Elish, the Polpavu, Atrahasis, a whole bunch of different creation stories. Kind of the thing that got me into all that was the TV show Ancient Aliens, right? I remember when that show very first came out, and I've been watching it religiously ever since. I've seen every episode in the 15 years or whatever it's been since that show's been on. I've literally gone through and binge watched from episode 1 all the way to the latest episode. I've done that several times, not to mention just the individual episodes that I like, how many times I've watched those episodes. So I've never really bought into the religion idea as a whole, let alone Mormonism, right? Ever since I was a little kid. So anyways, I've read these stories, I've read the Bible, I've read the Book of Mormon, I've read the Quran, I've read all this stuff, and you just, over time, collectively, you start seeing the commonalities, the similarities, right? And, you know, for example, literally every creation story known to man has a flood story, right? Well, at some point you have to say, okay, well, maybe there really was some kind of catastrophe that created this flood narrative for all of these people, right? Well, when you start reading the Antiquities, Herodotus and Diodorus and, you know, things like that, you start realizing, well, wait a minute, the flood in the Bible, what they're talking about is the Mediterranean Sea, right? So there really was a flood of the Mediterranean Sea, you know, and historically speaking, that really did happen. But it wasn't a worldwide flood, though. It was the Straits of Gibraltar broke out and it flooded the Mediterranean, right? That was the Garden of Eden, was the Mediterranean, right? There's, you know, today, in today's world, we know there's over 200 that we have found, right? There's over 200 sunken cities in the Mediterranean that are under, 1,000 feet of water. So, you tell me, a lot of this stuff that this channel does in particular is connect the dots. Okay. Think of a puzzle, right? And you're trying to put together this puzzle. Well, you have the entire puzzle in front of you, right? All of the work has been done, right? The historians, the book writers, the authors, the movie makers, the podcasters, all of the work has been done for you. Now it's time for you to start putting together the puzzle, okay? Because it's all there right in front of your face, and everybody's been staring at it for 200 years. And you put together a couple of pieces, and somebody will come along and say, oh, no, that piece don't fit. So you stare at it for another 75 years, and you're like, oh, okay, that piece really doesn't fit. Well, if you stare at it long enough, of course it's not going to fit, because this person created doubt, right? And so now you're staring at it and you're thinking, maybe that really don't fit. And you take it back out. Okay. Well, I'm here to say, hey, well, that piece does fit. Just the edge is a little crinkled. And if you stand back and look at it, you can clearly see that it fits, right? But sometimes you just got to stand back. Okay, well, that's what I'm doing, is connecting the dots, putting the puzzle together. You got to start at the corners, right? Everybody knows when you put together a puzzle, you start at the corner. You build your edge, and then you work in, right? Well, a lot of people have already completed the puzzle, but that one piece that person created the doubt with, that's the piece they're waiting on, okay? Well, that's where the apostate congregation comes in. That's you guys, right? You say, whoa, wait, that does fit. Now your puzzle's complete and you can see the whole picture, right? Okay, that's what the Mormon Atheist is all about, is completing that picture, because you're all correct. Every one of you guys are correct. This piece connects to this piece. This piece connects to that piece. Well, what about this piece over here? How can you have this piece without this piece? And it doesn't make sense. Well, because somebody created doubt with one of your pieces, that's why. And so you're trying to form the puzzle without that piece, but you have it. You just got to put it down, right? That's what's happening in Mormonism. There's a lot of doubt created, right? They create doubt. If you look at the Mormon information pool, the Mormon bubble, right, is what I call it. Okay, they tell you that you can look for information, okay, but here's where to go to find it, right? You see the trick, okay? And then coincidentally enough, they have bookstores that you can go, Siegel Books, Deseret Books. This is where you need to go to find this information that you're looking for when you're having a faith crisis. Okay? Well, that is wrong. That is very, very wrong, because your cult is telling you how to stay within your cult to validate the information about the cult. You understand? So go outside, look at outside sources. Go to that website that you've never heard of. Right? Go to that YouTube podcast that you've never heard of and watch their episodes, read their articles, read their books. Okay. Don't go to Siegel Book and Deseret Book, because those are Mormon books. Those are Mormon bookstores. So of course they're going to have the answers to what you're looking for, because it's the Mormon bookstore. It's the cult bookstore, right? So be careful where you go to find your information, and make sure whatever you're looking for is validated by other people. Other people are talking about it, right? That's one of the things that I like to do, is I like to cross-reference a lot. So if I hear something on this channel over here, X, Y, and Z, I don't just immediately run out and say, oh, did you see, oh, did you hear? No, I'll do that, but I want to make sure somebody else has said it also, 3 or 4 people. Nothing that I personally am saying is new, right? Everything that I'm saying, all of my videos, everything, none of it's new. It's all out there. You just have to go find it, look for it, question, right? Question. Anything that I say on any of my videos, I hope if I don't, I hope the apostate congregation will hold my feet to the fire. But I put references down. I put them in my community chats, right? On my page, you go to the community part, and that's where I put a lot of my references is over there. I talk about the books that I'm pulling information from, right? The video that I watched, I tell you about the video, or, you know, what I think is a better one than the other one, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But, and also I read directly out of the Book of Mormon on every one of my videos. I read directly out of the Book of Mormon. So there is no assumptions. There's no theories. It's not my theory. It's what the text says. It's what the book says, right? It's not my theory. That is literally what the text say. So if you don't agree with the text, then how can you agree with the Book of Mormon, right? So whatever I'm saying, if you don't agree with it, take it up with your bishop, right? Because I'm reading right out of the Book of Mormon, and I'm not opining. I'm not, you know, I do throw in some opinion here and there, but you know, who doesn't do that, right? But nonetheless, the point I'm trying to make is it's not my theory. It's directly out of the book itself. So there is no theory, right? There's no theory, okay? And I'll give you an example of that here in a minute. We're going to get into that. So also, one of the things, you know, what led me to kind of come to where I'm at in my life, right? Where I, you know, how did I get here, right? How did I get to become the Mormon atheist, right? So I've done a lot of traveling. I've been to a lot of different places outside of the U.S., a lot of islands, done a lot of traveling, seen a lot of things, seen a lot of really intense poverty in other countries. Really makes you kind of question the validity of the Bible just in general, right? And, you know, God, what, you know, if we're created in God's image, why are there, you know, how do you explain genetics? No two people are alike. So if we're in God's image, what exactly is that image? You know, is it blind? Is it black? Is it Asian? Is it Malaysian? Is it Ethiopian? Is it, you know, Hispanic? Which image is it, right? People are born with one arm, one leg. They're born blind. They're born with, you know, tails. They're born with 3 thumbs. They're born with, you know, birth defects, right? Is that God's image? You know, so what is God's image? You know, what exactly is God's image, right? You know, what about somebody being raped, right? A child being molested, right? Is it God's will for that child to get molested, or is it God's will for that person to molest the child? Which is it, right? Either way you look at it, it's a messed up situation. So did God do that? Is that God's will? You know, I mean, think about it. This is stuff to think about, right? There's 4 questions. We'll say 3 questions. Where do we come from? How did we get here? Where do we go when we die? Those 3 questions. That's God right there, right? That's where you get your God right there. It's an attempt to explain those questions. It's an attempt, because nobody knows where we came from. Nobody knows why we're here, and nobody knows where we go when we die. Nobody knows. These are the mysteries, right? When you read antiquities, right? These are the mysteries. What are the mysteries? The mysteries are, where did we come from? Why are we here? Where do we go when we die? And that's what religion is an attempt to explain that. Religion of any faith, it doesn't matter what part of the world you're from, what point in time you live in, doesn't matter. That's what we're trying to explain. And so now God says, hey, I'm going to tell one guy for the entire world, right? The whole world. And this one guy is going to go spread my message. And then we're going to say that one guy, his people are the chosen people. I mean, are you serious? Come on, talk about supremacy, right? What kind of supremacy is that? Now God has favorites. God has favorites, and it doesn't matter what culture, what part of the world, what point in time you're living in. God literally has always had a favorite of some kind, some sort, some nation, some race. Sacrifice this food for me. And I mean, it's the age-old story through time. In 2024, aren't we grown up enough as a species, as a human race, as a human culture to say, hey, maybe we don't need these things anymore in this point in time? Because if you read the Bible, and if you read the Book of Enoch, and if you read the Book of Mormon, and if you don't question that, you have serious problems with yourself and your personal life. I don't know. I'm not here to judge, but I will judge you on this point. Yeah, because read the Bible, man. Read that book. And if you still believe in that book after you're done reading it in context, and you still believe in that book, I mean, you really should be in a mental hospital, because for one, you are not an Israelite, most likely, right? God only protects the descendants of Jacob, okay, which are Israelites. And, so unless you're a descendant of Jacob or an Israelite, the Bible literally has nothing to do with you. Literally, in a contextual level, if you read the book in context, it literally has nothing to do with you unless you are a descendant of Jacob, which Mormons are not descendants of Jacob. I want to be clear on that, right? Because the Book of Mormon tries to make that leap, okay? Okay, so we're also going to talk about Solomonic magic, okay? Solomonic magic, in my community chats, I have, there's parchments that Joseph Smith's family had. There's a medallion that Joseph Smith was found with when he died. These symbols that are on those parchments, you can go into my community chats, and I have pictures and some other things on there that you can look at. But those are Solomonic magic symbols, right? And so my whole theory about this is the Joseph Smith family, the Smith family, the senior, Joseph Smith Sr. and their mother, were very into these cultic practices and esoteric ideas, right? They're very, very heavy into these, right? And people that know the history of the church and know the history of Joseph and all this kind of stuff, they know that he was a necromancer. He was practicing divination. His brother Alvin died. They dug Alvin up, and they cover up these stories, right? And they say, well, yes, they did raise Alvin, but that was as far as it went. It was to prove a newspaper article. Well, no, that's not what's happening here, right? What's happening here is Solomonic magic. Alvin was supposed to go to find the treasure, and in Solomonic magic, if you raise a dead body, you can invoke a spirit that will help you, right? So Alvin was supposed to go, but he died. So now they're like, oh, yikes. If that's a 1920s word, yikes. What do we do now, right? So they raised his body and they cut off his right arm. Well, there's a whole reason for the cutting off of the right arm or hand, right? And there's all of this is magic, right? It's magic rituals, Solomonic magic rituals. The seer stones, the head in the hat, all of that literally is Solomonic magic. You can look up the Lesser Keys of Solomon, and you can see the angel Adonai, right? I just forgot the name. Tetragrammaton or something, or Tetragrammaton. I had the name written down on a other piece of paper, and I left it over there. So, anyways, you will know when you read it. You will know what I'm saying. It's like Tetragrammaton or something, or Gamagan or something like that. Anyways, that is a Solomonic angel. Alma in the Book of Alma in the Book of Mormon is a Solomonic angel. Layman in the Book of Mormon is the parchment is actually called a layman in Solomonic magic. There's Solomonic magic all throughout the Book of Mormon. You have to read it, okay? And then in Joseph Smith's personal story, all the way up into a point, okay? It's steeped in Solomonic magic. And then you come to a point, something happens. I believe it was Alvin. Alvin is what happened. They raised Alvin and they tried to do some weird Solomonic magic stuff to find this buried treasure. They drew a circle, cut the head off a chicken. Sometimes they used black sheep, and they dripped the blood around the circle. And this is how you find treasure, right? This is all Solomonic magic. The Lesser Keys of Solomon go into very great detail on all of this stuff. The sword that they have of Joseph Smith, the ceremonial sword, that's not a Masonic sword. That's a Solomonic magic sword. The symbols that are on those are Solomonic. And all of this stuff you can look up. You can look it up. Look up the Lesser Keys of Solomon. You can look up Solomonic symbols. You can look up the signs of seals of Solomon. There's several different routes that you can take to find this information. I do have pictures and stuff like that in my community chats of the parchments and the medallion. But I really want to drive that home though, because I'm really convinced that Mormonism, the foundation of Mormonism, is Solomonic magic. Now, like I was saying, up until a point, right? Because if you read the Book of Mormon and if you look at Joseph's personal life, there's a change, right? It goes from Solomonic to Masonic, right? Okay, well, this change takes place. And then in the Book of Mormon, that same change takes place. In the beginnings of the Book of Mormon, they're going through and they're practicing all sorts of magic. And then there becomes a point in the Book of Mormon, I think it's around, what is it? Not Ether, but I think it is Alma, around Alma, the Alma area. It starts talking about how magic and magicians and soothsayers and seers and all that stuff are bad. But that's because of the Masonic influence, right? It's changing, right? From Solomonic to Masonic, okay? And the Book of Mormon reflects that. These stories, the Book of Mormon is Joseph's personal journey to his own personal promised land And it begins with the retrieval of the 116 pages, okay? The 116 pages is the catalyst for the entire book, right? So and if you read the Book of Mormon, what is First Nephi about? They're being pushed out of the land. The father is being promised the promised land where we can all go and just be free. This is the story of the Book of Mormon, right? And then a whole bunch of stuff happens in between there, right? Well, the same exact events happen in Joseph's life, right? They go to recover the lost 116 pages. The father is being kicked out of the land because of magic. Same thing as the Book of Mormon. So this storyline is very prevalent, right? And so the thing that tipped me off about this was I have been doing another show on another podcast. Reading is called Latter Daily Digest, and we're going through the chapters starting in chapter 1, and we're reading through chapter 1, chapter 2, First Nephi, Second Nephi, so on and so forth. And we're kind of doing my personal take on these. So on that channel, we're in First Nephi, chapter 4. So I've read the Book of Mormon a couple of times and the Doctrine and Covenants. And so I'm reading these and I'm thinking to myself, this sounds a whole lot like the Doctrine and Covenants, chapter 4 does in First Nephi. So I reread the Doctrine and Covenants, section 3 and 10. Okay, if you read the little paragraphs above the verses, that's what I read. And in those paragraphs, if you start out with section 10, read it, and then it will say, see section 3. Well, go to section 3 and read section 3. And then go back to section 10 and finish reading section 10. Okay? And then actually read sections 3 and 10. Well, it tells you what happened to the lost plates, or the lost 116 pages. So in my mind, there's no questions asked anymore. That question has been put to bed as far as I'm concerned. What happened to the lost 116 pages? Well, sections 3 and 10 of the Doctrine and Covenants literally tell you this is Joseph Smith's prophecies. These are his words. This book has been canonized, right? So if you don't believe in the book, what do you believe in? Okay. He literally tells you what happened to the 116 pages, right? So if you read the rest of the Book of Mormon in that context of that mindset, right? Of, hey, wait a minute, this is what happened with the 116 pages. And then you read First Nephi, right? All you got to do is read the first 5 chapters, First Nephi. It literally takes you about 15 minutes to read all 5 chapters. Okay. Because they're only like 20 something verses in each chapter. Okay. So it's not a hard, difficult read. And you will see the recovery of the 116 plates in the Book of Mormon in the first 5 chapters. Okay. And then it also sets the stage for literally the entire Book of Mormon when you read it under those contexts, right? Joseph Smith is looking for his own personal promised land, and it begins with the recovery of the lost tablets, the lost plates, the lost 116 pages. What is the Book of Mormon about? It's the recovery of the lost tablets to create another book, and they're being forced out of the land to go to their own promised land so they can live and be free. It's literally the same exact story. And then it's written in the style of Solomon Spaulding, right? I'm not interested in what Solomon Spaulding book is about or what it's called or any of that stuff. I'm strictly talking about the style in which it was written. I don't care what the book is about. I'm not interested in the parallels. I'm not, none of that stuff. In fact, the entire reason I started this channel was specifically to look at the parallels. Well, since I've started the channel, I've come to realize that, so my theory, my base theory was, I was reading the Book of Mormon. I was like, man, this really sounds a lot like Enoch. This incredibly sounds like the Book of Enoch. So I started looking at the parallels, come to find out that these parallels are, 40 years old. People have been looking at these parallels in Enoch, right? So it was nothing new, right? The work had already been done. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is really interesting, which led into other parallels. Well, the work of that has already been done. So I'm thinking, wow, this is really interesting, So then, and in my mind, okay, I'm thinking of the chronological order of the books. In my mind, I'm thinking the Bible was first, then the Book of Enoch, then the Book of Mormon. Okay, that was the order in which my thought was going. Well, so since this time, I have come to realize that the Book of Enoch was first. Okay, the Book of Enoch is written first, then the Old Testament, then the New Testament, then the Quran, then the Book of Mormon. Okay, that's the order, and that's my final story, and I'm sticking to it, apostate congregation. And here's why. So as I'm looking for parallels in the Book of Mormon and Enoch, I start realizing, wow, these parallels that they're talking about in the Book of Mormon are also passages that are lifted out of the Bible. Like they're verbatim passages that are taken out of the book of Isaiah and a couple of other ones, and they're put into the Book of Mormon as if they were their own like original passages, right? So how can that be if Enoch was written second, right? So I start doing my homework on the timeline of Enoch. Well, the Book of Enoch was written first, and Enoch in the Bible is his name is mentioned twice, but his story, right, and his ideas are literally all throughout the Bible, right, all throughout the Old and New Testament. So therefore, it would only be reasonable for there to be Enoch in the Book of Mormon, because all of those passages out of the Bible that have Enoch in them have been lifted and put into the Book of Mormon, right? Plagiarism on two accounts. There's plagiarism on the Bible's part, and there's plagiarism by default on the Book of Mormon's part, because there's no way Joseph Smith could have known that, right? It's not plausible that he would have known that. So that ended my theory. That put my theory to bed. So now I got to come up with a new idea. Oh my gosh, I started this channel based on parallels, and now my parallel idea is I literally shut down my own parallel idea. So isn't that how we grow, though? Isn't that how we learn? Is by doing stuff like that? If you get stuck to one idea and then you defend that one idea to the death, what are you now? Right? Now you're dogmatic, and you're not willing to change, right? When science and evolution and new ideas and stuff dictate that change, right? You become a fundamentalist. Okay, so that's how I read the Book of Mormon, is by reading it with the mindset of section 3 and 10. And then everything else kind of falls, the pieces literally fit together. It literally, everything falls into place. If you read the Book of Mormon as if it was Joseph Smith's own personal journey to his own personal promised land, everything makes sense, okay? Everything makes sense. It all clicks into place. You put in the Solomonic magic in there, and it literally falls into place. Yes, there is Masonic magic, but that doesn't come until later, though. Okay, you have to remember timelines here. Dates are very important. What is happening at that time? What's going on with Joseph Smith Sr. and Joseph Smith's mother, right? What do they think? What are they practicing? Okay, because Joseph Smith's entire life, his entire childhood, is steeped in Solomonic magic. So just by pure default, right, he's going to know this stuff, and he's going to know these things, right? So you have to connect the dots, and you have to be able to change your own personal ideas, and you have to be able to evolve yourself and say, wow, that I really want to go with that idea, but it's just not fitting. The puzzle piece just doesn't fit. So find out why. Figure out why that puzzle piece don't fit. Don't wait for somebody to come and tell you. I mean, what good is that going to do? Because now you're just going to waste all this time when you could have took 5 minutes and Googled it and set your mind at ease and been like, oh, that's why. Okay, I get it now. I understand. So use your faculties, apostate congregation. Think outside the box. Look for outside sources. That's very, very key. That's important, huge. And remember dates, because everything has to have a date. Everything is chronological, right? If you're trying to think of something and it's not fitting, it might be because the date is wrong. I mean, you got to keep this stuff so simple. Keep it simple, right? There's an old thing, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple. Don't overthink this stuff, because we're dealing with 1820s mindset, okay? We can use our 21st century brain, but we have to go back and think like an 1820s person, okay? I really hope that resonates with some of you. The antiquities are like that as well. You can't read Diodorus, and when you hear about a horse that you've never heard of before, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, this is myths and legends. Well, you're thinking with your 21st century brain. You're not thinking with a 60 BC brain, okay? That's important here. You have to do them justice. You're doing them a service by understanding what's going on in their brains, not our brains, what's going on in their brains at the time in question, okay? That's important. That's very important to be able to do that. Okay, so that's what, I really encourage everybody to read the Bible, read the Book of Enoch, read the Book of Mormon, so you know these stories, because that way you can say, oh, that's not what that book says. When somebody starts talking and telling you, hey man, this is what the book really says, you don't need to read it, just take my word for it because I study it. Okay, well, big whoop. Okay, I'm glad you study it. Now show me the passage so I can go look at it, and I will make my own decision as to what that says. Okay, that's how I operate. I don't want any, you can mention it to me, you can bring it to my attention, but I want to go study it myself, which is the way that I operate with you guys. This is why I don't put stuff on the screen, because I want you to go look at it. Because by doing that, you're going to find other stuff. You're going to come across other things. And if it's something that I'm not saying, or I'm not mentioning, or I'm not commenting on, put it down in my comments, because I answer all of my comments, all of them, every one of them I answer. So if you comment on here, you're going to get an answer. And maybe it's something that I don't know about. So put it on there and say, hey, have you looked into this or have you looked into that, right? But one thing that I do not want though is LDS website propaganda stuff, right? Because I want outside sources. Look outside of the LDS information pool. That's very important. So now in conclusion here, I want to refer to a couple of books, okay? Dr. Nick Latursky, okay, he has a book. It's called Method Infinite. His book is on it's on the magics of Mormonism, okay? It's on the Solomonic magic aspects of Mormonism. And it does turn into Freemasonry, okay? But I want to be clear though that early Mormonism is very Solomonic, okay? And then it slowly turns into Freemasonry, okay? But that early section is definitely, and you can go to the Lesser Keys of Solomon. You can read Nick Latursky's book, Method Infinite. You can also look up Dr. Stephen Skinner. He's a PhD and he writes books on the occults just in general, right? He's been doing this for like 30 some years or something, right? One of his books I actually have in my community chats on the channel. I have a link to his book, specifically the one I'm talking about here. He writes a whole section on the parchment papers that Joseph Smith had, and scratch that Hiram had, and it was handed down. So he describes everything on that paper, all the symbols, all the, where you put the candles, the whole 9 yards. It's all described, and it's all Solomonic magic. It's Solomonic, alchemy, and astrology all combined, okay? And then you can actually go and, believe it or not, Aleister Crowley wrote a book about Joseph Smith. The book is not about Joseph Smith, but Joseph Smith is talked about in his book. And the name of that book is called Moonchild. Basically, the section that he's talking about Joseph Smith as is Aleister Crowley is fascinated with how Joseph Smith made it, right? He's another guru that all other gurus kind of, strive to be like, because Joseph Smith made it, right? He was a guru that made it. Now, Aleister Crowley and Joseph Smith never met each other, so I don't want to hear anything about meeting each other, because Aleister Crowley was born long after Joseph Smith died, so there is no meetings, okay? But he did write a book referring to him. Okay, so last but not least, I want to say Nathan Wood, okay? You can Google Nathan Wood. You have to look up Nathan Wood occultist, okay? If you look up Nathan Wood, an athlete guy will show up. So if you put occultist next to it, the right guy will show up. Well, he had a movement, okay? And you can read his little bio, and keep in mind the name of his movement was called the Latter-day Saints, okay? So you can look him up on Wikipedia, you can look him up anywhere you want to, and you'll read his little bio, and it really sounds a whole lot like Mormonism. And the name of his group was called the Latter-day Saints. So now his group did die out through failed prophecies. You can go back to the religious revolution. That's religious revival. That was what was happening in the 1820s at the time. So all of these little groups and cults and little things, Jehovah's Witness, the Baptists, the Seventh-day Adventists, literally all of these American religions came from this section, Mormonism, the whole nine, okay? All of them did. And so that's kind of where that all stands. But at any rate, so there we have it. That's my presentation more or less. Solomonic magic is very much a part of early Mormonism. You can look it up, all the signs and seals and symbols and all that stuff, the parchment papers, the medallion, the sword, all of that stuff, the circles, the animal sacrifices, the soothsaying, the treasure hunting, the head in the hat, the seer stones, all of that literally is Solomonic magic. Later turns into Freemasonry. Okay, the church themselves did that. That's not Solomonic magic and Freemasonry are very separate things. Okay, but they raised Alvin, remember, and it really scared Joseph. And so after that, they kind of stopped doing this, the magic part of it, and went into something a little more safe called Freemasonry. So anyways, read the Book of Mormon with section 3 and 10 in mind. Okay, they literally tell you what happened to the 116 pages. So the whole idea of Martin Harris's wife throwing the papers in the fire, all that is gone. It says it in the text. Okay, the book. You cannot argue with the book. It literally says it in the book, what happened to the 116 pages. If you read sections 1 through 19 in the Doctrine and Covenants, that is all of the threats. Okay, and he really puts Martin Harris to the test. Like in section 19, he like just has had it with Martin Harris, and he really just tears him up, right? So, all right, guys, that's gonna be the it for here. In my future episodes, I'm really hoping to get a couple of these authors on the show. I have never interviewed anybody before, so that it'll be a first for me. And I'm really working on one. There's one that I'm really working on, and I think they're gonna come apostate congregation. So I'll be able to bring that to you guys. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but it is looking like it's going to happen. So that'll be really cool. I'm not ready to give the name away yet, but it is one of the names on this list. And I can tell you it's not Aleister Crowley. So anyways, look out for more episodes. I'm still on my channel. If you go back and look on the channel, on the videos, I'm doing ether right now. I just did one on Kurlams and Kumams, and elephants in the Americas. What is a Kurlam and a Kumam? I don't know, but it's in the book though. So this is the book that Mormons believe in. So, you know, they have to believe in Kurlams and Kumams. Anyways, thank you, Apostate Congregation, for joining me today and taking the time to watch my nonsense here. It's really good stuff. If you have ears to hear, you can hear what I'm saying to you, and it makes a lot of sense. The pieces fit together. If you just have to be willing to hear it and see it. It is really that simple, guys. Don't overthink this stuff because it's really that simple. Keep it simple. Okay, 1920s brain. All right, guys, keep a lookout for my videos. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I have a whole bunch of other things coming up. So it's going to be really interesting and a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing this. This is a lot of fun. I'm not very good at it, but I do enjoy it though. And I am getting better. And things will improve. The quality of the videos will improve. Just everything will improve over time. Just give me some time. Okay. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Happy Sunday. And Apostate Congregation, I do thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.